Gwen Harwood is a name commonly put forward as a candidate for the greatest Australian poet in history. What's unique about this claim is that it is put forward both by the more experimental sides of Australian poetry and the more traditional sides of Australian poetry. I'm going to look at her exploration of regret and motherhood in one of her most famous poems. It's a sonnet, and I will start off with the first two quatrains and walk you through those. They make up the octet. In a sonnet, we have an octet, 8 lines, followed by a sestet, 6 lines. In between these two sections is generally a turn. The poem says one thing at the start, and then it twists us to talk about another thing for the next 6 lines. Part of what makes a sonnet so beautiful. She sits in the park. Her clothes are out of date. 2 children whine and bicker, tug her skirt. A third draws aimless patterns in the dirt. Someone she loved once passes by, too late. So we can see here that she is a mother living in the suburbs. She's taken her children to the park. She's not able to keep up with fashion like she might have when she was younger. She's having to deal with these 3 children whining and bickering and doing silly things. And then someone she loved once, she used to love this person, they pass by too late. It's too late. She can't do anything with them. Their lives have diverged. She's gone one way, they've gone another way. Now this too late is going to be drawn out in the next line to mean something slightly different. But when a poet does that, when they end a line on a word, this is called enjambment, it allows them to mean 2 different things. It means one thing when you're reading the line by itself and another thing when we cross over to the next line. So you're about to see how she moves it on. But the first thing that comes to our mind when we read this line is that this person has passed by too late. It's too late. She loved them once, but now it's too late. To feign indifference to that casual nod. How nice, etc. Time holds great surprises. From his neat head unquestionably rises a small balloon, but for the grace of God. So we see here the meaning of too late transformed in this stanza is that she's too late to feign indifference to that casual nod. She wants to seem indifferent. She wants to seem like she doesn't care about this guy. He's just another person in her life. But actually she's already shown in her facial expression how excited she is to see him, how much she loved him. And they talk a while, how nice, etc. You know, they're just doing small talk. Time holds great surprises because he's talking about whatever's happening in his life. She's talking about whatever's happening in her life, which is just these children mucking around in the dirt. And from his neat head unquestionably rises. So just as she was unable to hide her reaction, he's unable to hide what he is thinking, but for the grace of God. So a shortening of the usual phrase, there but for the grace of God go I. He could have been in this situation. If he'd gotten married and had 3 kids, he could have been sitting in this park having to look after these kids, having out-of-date clothes, looking miserable. How awful. There but for the grace of God go I. So he's feeling absolute pity for her. This is the person who she once loved, who they were once in the same sort of circles probably. She was a budding artist as a young person, probably expecting to go and live in a big city and go to events every weekend. And she's not. She's living in a small suburban town that she hates. Got the first 8 lines where she's built this image for us of what's happening, of who these 2 people are who are talking in the park. And now she's going to turn it on its head, the volta. They stand a while in flickering light, rehearsing the children's names and birthdays. It's so sweet to hear their chatter, watch them grow and thrive, she says to his departing smile. Then nursing the youngest child, sits staring at her feet. To the wind she says, they have eaten me alive. So they just continue on with their chitter-chatter. She's telling him about the children's birthdays and names, acting as if there is this exciting thing, saying how much she loves it. It's so sweet to hear their chatter. You know, she's saying she loves this whole thing, but she was already unable to hide it earlier. Watch them grow and thrive. She's trying her hardest to to make sure this pity doesn't happen, she's trying to say, look, I'm fine, I'm happy. She says to his departing father, but he's already leaving. He knows what's happening. He's off. They're in completely different worlds now. They've taken different paths in their lives. And she sits nursing the youngest child and staring at her feet and to the wind. She has no one to talk to. She's all alone. All she has is these 3 kids who couldn't possibly understand her. They have eaten me alive. What a brutal final 5 words. They have eaten me alive, telling us exactly what she feels. This poem was written in 1961, so this was when the confessional movement was just becoming really big, and this is an absolutely confessional poem. This was something that in previous generations you would not have admitted to. You don't admit that you feel this way about your children. But she did. But she didn't. The real confessional poetry movement, they were putting out these poems under their own name. They were confessing things about themselves. Gwen Harwood published this under a male pseudonym, presumably because she didn't want her children, she didn't want her husband knowing that she had these thoughts. So she's confessing through the poem, but she was not confessing with her name attached at that time. Later on it became known that this was her poem. But initially she wanted to hide that fact. Because it's a pretty terrible thing to admit, right? That you regret having children, that they've eaten you alive, that you're having all of these negative feelings about them, that you wish you were like this man you used to love who hadn't taken that path, who hadn't had children. But in fact, 34 years later, she wrote another sonnet about this sonnet. And it's interesting to look at that and see how her regrets changed, how her feelings about motherhood changed. She actually moved to feeling more regret at having written this poem having become her most famous poem, actually, highly anthologized in Australia. Unlike the confessional poets, Gwen Harwood lived a long and relatively happy life. So she started to regret the poem. She sits in the park, wishing she'd never written about that dowdy housewife and her brood. Better the memoirs of a mad sex kitten or a high-minded ode to motherhood. In common meter with a grand doxology, they have eaten me alive. Did she write that? The sonnet nestles in a new anthology, safe in its basket as a favoured cat. She sits a while in flickering light, rehearsing the family's birthdays. Stop, you bloody fool! A young housefather with a pram is cursing a child who's pushed another in the pool. She helps him calm them. Eating you alive. Look at me. I've lived through it. You'll survive. So we see that at the time she was writing in the park, she accepts, yes, she was going through a very difficult time, just like this young house father. But she got through it. It was fine. Now instead of rehearsing the children's birthdays, she's rehearsing her family's birthdays. Her children have had children. And we see again, she gives us something that means one thing in one line and then something completely different in the next line. She says, stop, you bloody fool. And we think, oh, she's telling herself to stop rehearsing the family's birthdays. You know, she's still got this bitter feeling. But actually, she's hearing a young house father and he's cursing at his child. You know, he's going through the hell of fatherhood, raising this young child. But that's okay because she knows he's going to get through it. She helps him calm them. Eating you alive, she reuses her phrase. Look at me, I've lived through it. You'll survive. She got eaten alive, but she survived. This is a very new channel. I'm seeking to make videos about poets and poetry, reading it and writing it. If you're interested in that, please do hit the subscribe button.